Welcome back to another episode of Reverts Reality. We are on episode 82, alhamdulillah. And I am here with my co-host, Sister Orenda Dadkhah, and with the very special guest, mashallah, Sister Anna Midense. My name is Nahela Morales, and today we are talking about owning our story. Now, it's going to be a very interesting topic, and I think Sister Orenda and I were talking about the importance of owning our story. And we've had guests in the past where they have opened up and really opened our eyes as well, because we saw how genuine and raw it was, and obviously our stories are ours and we own them. And we should also be able to say as little or much as we want, because it's our story at the end of the day. And we need to make sure that we take that narrative back and that we tell our own story. So that's why it's important for us to do episodes such as this one today. And I have, today we have, as you see, a special guest who she will share her story. She's relatively new in Islam, and that's always beautiful. Last night we witnessed a shahada in one of our halakas. And one of the things I said there was for us to reflect on the day we embraced Islam. It's very important to not let a day go by and just go on with our lives without thinking, where are we? How far have we come and where we want to go? Today it's going to be about reflection as we are ending 2021. And Sister Orenda and I have a lot of, a lot to share as well. Sister Orenda has been in Islam for 27 plus years. So mashallah, she's our senior. And it's a blessing to always see how much growth she's done in her journey. As my friend, as my co-lead here, and as my sister in Islam, I've learned so much from her. And, I aspire to reach certain points that she has reached, because one of the things we don't realize is that when we enter Islam, we have so much expectations on ourselves, our communities, our families, and that's what we're going to talk about today, right, Sister Orenda?
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic because, we always talk about, this is Revert Realities. We talk about topics that hit us as reverts or converts or new Muslims. And it's not all bad. I mean, Islam is amazing. That's why we were drawn to Islam. But people are not perfect. And so we come into Islam, of course, like Sister Nahela said, with all these expectations, and we get overwhelmed with the amount of information. And we come from a life where we're doing a lot of the stuff that Islam teaches us not to do for a reason. And so that change over, not only are you in a gray zone where you're not really fitting into the Islamic community, you're not really fitting into your family and friend circle anymore because you're following a different lifestyle. But now you're having to, do I tell them about my past? Right. And so that's where we're talking, because some people are really shy. And of course, everybody has their own, it's your choice what you want to share, how much you want to share of your story, because it is your journey. But we do have people that are very shy to say anything bad about their past, anything they did bad in the past that is against what we now follow. But we also have other people who really embrace their past because it shows where they came from and how Islam really brought them out of that darkness and really made a difference in their life. And they're making a difference in their communities because of that. And so that's what we want to talk about today is, if you are a convert, if you've embraced Islam, it's okay to share as much as you're comfortable with. But we're going to talk about this dynamic of how important it is to really own your story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, Anna, why don't you take us on your journey and share with us, how did it all begin for you? When was that connection? How many years did it take? Months? What was that pivotal moment in your life where you said, this is it? I know for me, I said, I tried everything and I said, no, this is it. 3 and 1 doesn't make sense. And this is it for me. So take us on a journey, Sister Anna.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say that I resonated with everything that you guys talked about. I've gone through all those different emotions. I've gone through all those different thoughts of how much do I share about myself. I think a big piece of it is that maybe I'd be shy to share because I had this idea that being Muslim meant that you were pristine and clean and clear of everything, and I would never have dared done these things, but that's just not the reality. So for me, before Islam, I was always kind of agnostic. I never looked into religion. Religion never really interested me. My family is like Catholic, Christian, that background. I never really read the Bible. I remember maybe attending a few like masses for Christmas or Easter when I was really young. And so I just didn't get it. It didn't click to me. I had lots of friends in high school that were multicultural, that were of different religions. And even when I got curious enough to ask, I was kind of put off, honestly, by like the religious institute of it all. And so I just continued to live my life kind of without that type of direction. And what that led, and ultimately what I learned, was that it was Allah's decree of it all, was that I, in high school, had a high school sweetheart. I got really involved with that. So straight into college, I had my daughter. I got married all within a year. I grew up really quickly, and the reality set in of living away from family. So I'm originally from Honduras. I'm an only child. I moved to the States with my family when I was 3. So I had been in Texas since middle school. So just the background of like how American I am, essentially. But it started pretty much after I had my daughter, where growing up so quickly brought on a lot of challenges of who I was, the type of mother and woman I wanted to be, what was I able to achieve. I felt like a lot of people wanted to stereotype me as that, like that young girl that got pregnant in college, got married young. But I have a lot of ambition. So, alhamdulillah, with the support of my family, like I graduated university, magna cum laude. I went and got my first big girl job in an investment banking firm. And I went and started to work. But in the background, my like young relationship, marriage crumbled, and just realized that we had grown up too quickly, and I never really discussed what it was going to be like raising a family, and we just didn't have the same types of values. So that's really important for me to distinguish in my story, because once I moved to Dallas about 5 years ago for the job, is when I started to feel lost. Like essentially my entire future that I had planned, I never expected to go through a divorce. I never expected to just be having to learn how to like raise my daughter as a co-parenting style, all of that. I was always somebody that had like that 5-year, 10-year plan. So when all of that shattered, I felt really lost. And being lost caused me to be influenced by other people that I was around. And so I was a young 20-year-old, and like a lot of Americans here, they prioritize going out, just being social. And I tried to like live up my youth when I didn't have my daughter, try and feel like, oh, this is kind of what I was supposed to do. I just didn't get a chance to do it being a young mom. And you know what? It was fun at the time, but it didn't help me whatsoever. Like I still dealt with anxiety. I still dealt with having like really low days of like, what am I doing with my life? And so my journey with Islam started actually with a coworker of mine who was Muslim. Really unexpected. Like, again, I wasn't searching for religion. I had attended like one church for one day, and I was like, these people are crazy. I can't be here. And so it's the way that he approached me about Islam was not like, it was never about like, let me tell you, let me teach you. He just spoke about what he knew. And it was the piece of how he spoke about Allah and the attributes about Allah being the creator, and we're his creations, and he's not like any of his creations. That is the piece that got me really interested in Islam. And the reason why is because even though I wasn't religious, I felt like, I don't know, I guess I was like spiritual. I felt like there was something bigger in the universe, and I would wish a lot all the time, be making wishes, and I really hope and asking the universe. And so I get emotional as I reflect on all of this, because I now realize that like I was constantly trying to have a connection with God, and he guided me even though I didn't know it. I didn't expect to get emotional, but alhamdulillah.
It's Reverts reality, and you're good. Take a deep breath, and we appreciate that. We've gone emotional here. We've shed tears, and nothing scripted. And that's what I want our audience to know. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing this. So yeah, whatever you feel like sharing. I mean, up until now, it's amazing. Your journey is eye-opening for us that we have, teenagers and kids that perhaps will be going through that journey, to be able to navigate with that. So like you said, even though you were out there, you were still feeling all these emotions, and you thought that was going to basically numb whatever needed to be filled, right? And I think that happened to all of us at one point. I know for me, it was trying to numb that pain with everything that was prohibited, per se, like alcohol. And so instead of numbing it, it gave me more depression and more anxiety. And this is why Islam is so perfect, right? So yeah, you're good, girl.
I definitely get that. I definitely now see like alcohol is a vice. People use it to distract themselves from like their true issues. I get it why people drink. So it's like never any judgment when somebody feels lost and it reaches out to that, because they don't have any other type of support. And so I think the reason that I bring it all up was that I just wanted to portray how I wasn't looking for religion. I wasn't like necessarily like seeking God. It just came at the right time, like subhanallah. Like it was just meant to be that I never wanted that job at Goldman. Like I'd had no interest, but I just happened to be there and meet that coworker, and through just a conversation, it planted a seed that ultimately changed my life. And I want to just say like, wow, like subhanallah, like it could just happen like that to anybody if they open themselves up to it, if they allow themselves to be curious. Obviously I had some Muslim friends, but they weren't like the practicing Muslim type friends, so it wasn't one where we talked about religion, I would say. And so I started to do my own research, especially because the more I learned about Islam, the more I learned about the attributes of Allah. And I think that's the biggest importance as a new Muslim, is to not bombard yourselves with the rules and the jurisprudence and the rights, but start with the attributes of Allah. Understand who your creator is. Start to build that relationship with your creator, because it's the most important thing that you need to hold on to, whether if you like fall off the tracks. Like I'll be open. Like when I first became Muslim, I really wanted to start to learn how to pray, do salah, just because I knew it was one of the pillars. So I was like, I at least need to focus on the pillars. And I had that momentum as a new Muslim to learn to pray. And I wanted to do it right on time and perfectly. And like, alhamdulillah, at first it was easy. But then as the months went on, I got burnt out. I got burnt out through this whole like absorption phase that I went through. And my life started, a lot of different changes started happening, and I started losing routine. And it's become harder now, now that I've settled in. I still consider myself a new Muslim because I still have a lot to learn. But I will say, like, now it's a different type of challenge to pray 5 times a day. And I wonder, like, why? Where did that go? Like, before I was so enthusiastic about it, and I'm still kind of learning about it, but I do think a big piece of it is my perspective when it comes around Salah. And I do think that I got influenced a lot by the community, by being on a public social media platform and talking about being reverts. A lot of people just came at me with a bunch of information and came at me with, like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this right. And that burnt me out. And I stopped focusing so much about what was pleasing to Allah and just started trying to please others to try and fit in. And that kind of took me back. I had to take a few steps back. And I'm still working on it. I'm trying to keep focus on what actually really matters and not be so stuck on just, I don't know, just checking off boxes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it makes perfect sense. And so 2 things I wrote down. That thing that you said, Cloud9, we had a program on Cloud9. You know, you're on Cloud9 and you just want to do everything. So we're right with you. But something that really struck me was even that one person that conveyed the message to you with a conversation. You know, I mean, I've heard of, I knew one sister one time that called the Why Islam hotline, that it was because the gentleman didn't shake her hand. And he just said, it's out of respect. She went and Googled, what is this religion? Why you respect me? Like, you don't know me. And that drew her to learn, right? So many dynamics and so many ways. It is a responsibility upon us. And even just that good manner, right? Which is essential for anyone. We all have good manners. We were taught as little kids, you know, be nice, don't be rude, be respectful, and so on and so on. And so Islam just kind of, if you practice all of that, you're really practicing Islam to the T. So what did you say, Sister Orenda?
Absolutely. I mean, this is it's so common to hear this, and I can relate to your story so well, because when I first embraced Islam, I was surrounded by other people that were not converts. So it was a community of people that were doing exactly like you said, telling you what you were doing wrong or what you needed to do. And later on, years later, finding out that was a lot of cultural practices rather than Islamic practices. And so it did take me off the path too. I lost my zeal. And it was just like, well, okay, wait, they're Muslim. And then I come in with this understanding, okay, my sins are all forgotten. You know, when I embraced, they were erased. I'm starting with a clean slate. And I know sins that I did in the past, but that's okay, because now they're gone. Now you're looking at the Muslims like they're in the same position as you, right? They don't do anything wrong. And so it's an eye-opener when you see that not all Muslims are following their faith, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, trying to follow what everybody was telling me, not knowing, you know, whether it was really right or not. And then also coming to that understanding that it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. Because like you said, Sister Anna, it's ultimately about your relationship with your Creator. And everything that you're doing is for your Creator. And so it shouldn't matter what other people think, as long as your intention is to please Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I got off track for a while too. And I was like, well, they're not, you know, doing this, they're not doing that. So why should I work so hard to do it? Because I felt like I was so strict and like kind of a stick in the mud, sort of, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it was until I was pregnant with my son that I was like, wait a minute, I have a life growing inside my body, and this child's going to depend on me to teach him or her about my faith. And am I doing what I'm supposed to do for my Creator? Because if I'm doing something different than what I'm going to teach, that does not make sense at all. And so that was my understanding of where I really realized it doesn't matter about other people and whether they think I'm doing something right or not. And so I can so relate to this, and I know so many others that can as well. I just want to give a quick shout out to all our viewers. I see we have Brother Hamza. He was our previous guest who shared some of his story. And so that's what kind of initiated this today's story about being honest about our, to ourselves. And so I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Please make sure you share this out on your networks, because there's so many Muslims out there that are stuck. They're new Muslims that are stuck and they feel alone. And there's so many. I just read on one of the convert sites that, there's marriage troubles out there because their spouse is forcing them to tell about all their, previous sins. So educate yourself, connect with other people to understand what you're going through. So anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to our viewers and ask them to share this out, because it is very important that we all stick together and understand we're not alone.
Sister Anna, and so the other thing, our sins are forgiven. We start, like Sister Orenda said, on a clean slate. Salat was so easy, and then it became so hard. As we continue to navigate with our journey, because this is a lifetime, right? Until we meet our creator. So it doesn't end with the Shahada. I mean, that's the easy part. And I always say this, the Shahada is easy. It's what comes after, right? And
Right.
you said a couple things that really our audience, I hope that our audience reflects on this, is who are we trying to please, the creator or the creation? And I think once we have that, the other thing you said was getting to know our creator. The 99 names of Allah are pivoted in any life, whether you're born or you are enter the faith. But you need to know who your creator is, so when things come your way, because Allah tells us in the Quran very clearly that he's going to test us. This is not supposed to be home for us. This is supposed to be exactly that. We're supposed to be here as travelers, and we are on a journey to meet our Lord. So, Salat was difficult. How has it been since your journey? Are there any techniques that you have, made any changes? Have you made it habitual in the sense of, okay, I don't care, but I'm just going to set aside my times and I'm just going to give it my all? Because sometimes we even get into the habit of praying, and it's very robotic, right? There's no khushu. I mean, as soon as you say Allahu Akbar, like you're thinking, oh my God, I left something in the stove. Oh, did I go pick up this? Oh, I mean, the khushu goes out the door and shaitan is at it like this, right? So I know you're still new and that has been one of your struggles. So I want you to share with us some of that, because I know we have a lot of new Muslims listening to us. And just like you, myself, Sister Orenda, we've gone through all of this, right? And it's an everyday struggle.
Yes. Okay. So something I kind of glazed over was the fact that from that moment that I had spoken with my coworker about Islam to the point I took Shahada was probably 6 months. So I think I take everything pretty fast in life. I just kind of dive right into it. And when something really interests me, I really just start learning everything I could. So I did a lot of research. And once I pretty much found everything I could about Islam on the internet, I had a few things that I needed to ask somebody in person. So that led me to going to the masjid, and it was more so on the cultural side. The beliefs were solid. I was like, this is what I've always believed. It's just clearly explained to me. So that part was easy. When it came to taking my shahada, I actually didn't plan to take it that day. Just somebody at a center kind of asked me, would you want to take shahada? And I paused and I was like, nothing in me says no. So I'm going to take that as a sign and take my shahada. So it ended up being the day before Ramadan in May of 2019. So again, I jumped all into Ramadan, and I wasn't working at the time. So I had a lot of time on my hand to dedicate to learning about Islam. And what I will say now, 2.5 years in, things that make a difference, in a practical sense, about getting into the habit of making salah, was that I noticed that when I was actively learning, listening to lectures, whether it's a podcast or a video, there's so many resources. And maybe when it's not always, I really enjoyed learning the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like it was to learn. I don't know. I just related every single episode that I heard. I could relate some part of my life that very day back to the stories of the prophets and to his companions. That really helped in making me feel like, okay, this is a journey. It's not like an all-in-one done. Here's the rule book, follow it. So learning about the life of the prophet really helped me build a relationship and understanding like why we pray, how prayer was established, having the history behind it. I think also was like being intentional about it and starting to build a routine in my day around prayer. I first started, I was like, I'm going to start with the one prayer a day. I'm going to start with the hardest one. So I started with Fajr, the morning prayer. And that's kind of how I built it up. I started the hardest one. You can start with the easiest one. But the thing is, it's like throughout the years, different ones become harder. So now it's like Maghrib, right when I'm like picking up my daughter and dinner needs to be ready. It's really hard to like stop yourself in the commotion of everything and take that break and have that conversation with Allah. So that's now been like the most challenging one. But I think it's about like, okay, knowing that it's going to come up, you can anticipate it, have something kind of prepared to block off that time for yourself. I think taking a few minutes beforehand, like when you make wudu, when you wash up, to like start to clear out your mind. Really, honestly, I feel like a biggest struggle is that my brain has been filled with so many worries and thoughts. And when I start to miss one prayer or I delay one prayer, I start to delay the next prayer and it starts to build up and I can start to feel like, oh, the next day I don't wake up with such good thoughts. And I just feel like, oh my God, Shaitan has entered the room. There's so much like bad energy. And I know that if I just prayed, a lot of it would just get like pulled away. It's like that side of where like you want it to be like logical and scientific, but you can't really explain it. But I've like noticed the correlation with how my day turns out, whether versus I pray on time or not, or versus I go a day and miss prayers. Like I can see my mental health shift. And I'm like, Anna, why do you do this to yourself?
That's so on point.
It is.
Like, subhanAllah. What a breath of fresh air, Sister Anna. I couldn't, Sister Orenda, we couldn't have picked a better topic as we were winding down this year. For me, I think a very significant time was, going to Hajj, but then it was Umrah, right? Because Hajj is very rush, and run. And I fell and a lot of things happened during Hajj. But when I went to Umrah, like things, I made dua to go. Like Hajj, I said, please invite me again. Invite me again before my Zamzam water goes away. And I had this much, and then I knew I was going. I was like, okay, it's you. So I have to get it together, right? And this is years after, because, you do your prayer and you're late or you don't prioritize. And I think that's something that you're talking about, making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our priority and top of the line, right? Like he's the one that does not take our oxygen away because we don't pray, right? And these are the things that I'm like, okay, I'm able to see this beautiful sky thanks to him. Like I have sight, I have hearing, I'm able to walk. And so that gratitude kicks in a whole different dimension. And the transformation happens, like you said, with each salat, right? For you was the Fajr. For me, that's the easiest one because I'm up at the crack of dawn. For me, the hardest is Isha because I'm falling asleep in the couch at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But yeah, you're right. Everybody's struggle is different, but at the same time similar. And I think that's something that I want our audience to kind of reflect on your life. Where are you right now? And like Sister Anna said, like we have to know where we want to go or how do we want to change things. Sister Orenda made a very beautiful point. She had life in her. A baby was coming and she knew she had to learn. So I'm sure there's a lot of, moms who are pregnant listening to this, and perhaps you're not there yet. But, we have responsibilities and we have different types of amanas that Allah sends our way. And so we're responsible for that. And it's important for us to take a minute of our day to reflect and really contemplate and be grateful. Be grateful for all the ups and downs, because at the end of the day, they make us who we are, and we wouldn't be where we're at without those up and downs. So it's really beautiful, and I really appreciate the fact that you're being really real, like real Revert, and very vulnerable. Mashallah, it's awesome to hear this. The other question for me would be your daughter, right? You have a daughter, and
Mhm.
I want you to take us through that journey. I personally didn't have a difficult time. Number one, because my son was one, and this is all he knows, and his father was miles away, so he had no say so in my way of upbringing. Sister Orenda, her husband's Muslim, alhamdulillah, and they were being raised in a Muslim. But for you, share that aspect, because I know there's a lot of new Muslims out there who convert with their children either older or they don't know how to navigate this. So I think it's important for our audience to hear that portion.
Yeah, that's a really good topic, and something that I even am still like trying to learn and trying not to feel pressured about, because I came into Islam after my divorce. So it was nothing that like me and my ex-husband ever talked about. It was like this was my own decision, and we co-parent. So I knew the reality is that we're gonna have two different lifestyles, and the kind of intention that I've gone about it is the fact that it's like I'm just going to lead by example. That's the most that I can do at this point when my daughter is 6 years old. It's just lead by example, because I know that if I try to start establishing things into her routine, it's going to be the 180 when she goes to her father's house and there's no sort of like structure or routine or based around like Islamic factors. And so I don't want it to be like, oh, as she enters her preteen, teenage years, she's going to feel like mommy's house has all these rules while daddy's house, I can do whatever. And then, because she's a lot like me, like a lot. And so I know that if I try to force her to do anything or pressure to do it, she'd go the opposite way. Because that's kind of how I was as a teenager. Like, like my parents are the best, but I gave them like a hard time when I was in my teenage years of really wanting to figure out things for myself. So when it comes to my daughter and me being Muslim, I lead by example, and that has led to her coming with me to different like to the masjid. Just I want her to feel comfortable, like she can be around these people and not see herself any different. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Also, like me wearing hijab, she obviously asks about it, like, well, why do you cover your hair? And I try to explain it to her in like the simplest of terms, and some days she's like, just take it off, you look better without it. And I'm like, I know I look better without it, thank you, but I want to, like, it makes me happy to wear it. Like, just try to reassure her, like, this is my choice. And other times she's just like, can I have a scarf, can I be Muslim? And it makes me so happy because it's like she doesn't see anything wrong with it. And so when it comes to like her being around my extended family, my parents, that obviously they don't have the same religion, I allow her to be around it all, because ultimately I want her to embrace Islam on her own. And I just want her to just, I don't know, I don't want her to feel like, oh, you can't go and be over there, because it's constantly around her. It's her family. I'm not going to keep her away from her family. If anything, I just want her to feel just as comfortable being with her extended family as she is being around me and the Muslim community. So that's kind of my approach around it. And the biggest blessing of it all has just been like, she kind of knows how to pray just by like hearing me. Like, it's so cute when she goes, Allahu Akbar. Like, she's just picked it up. I have not taught her anything, just by what she's seen. And that makes my heart like super happy.
And that's the best thing you can do, is be that example. I mean, even for people like me, my kids grew up in a Muslim household. So I see they go through a lot of the struggles that I went through as a convert, though, because we have those different, families that aren't Muslim, right? So they're exposed to the other side of the family. But leading by example, I mean, there's no guarantee they're going to do everything you do, right? Even if they're brought up that way from birth. And it just reminds me of, a surah from the Quran in Baqarah, verse 256, let there be no compulsion in religion. And I think this is a really important thing for us to remember, that we want to connect ourselves with our creator. And when that connection is strong, we want to do the things that are good. We want to do the things that we should be doing. And our kids are going to learn from us. And I think as parents, and my kids are all older now, just in retrospect, sometimes I would get really upset when they aren't doing, oh my gosh, I've taught you your whole life this, why aren't you doing this? But then to remember that you implanted that seed, right? And you did your part. You had a trust from Allah, right? They were a trust that Allah gave to you to raise them. And so the best you can do is teach them. And I think, especially with your daughter being younger, I think the one thing I focused with my kids was that understanding of God, right? Allah. Right. And so all of the little details they kind of follow you along with, but that connection that they have a camera on them all the time is basically when they were little, I was like, Allah knows everything we're thinking, everything we're doing, everything we're contemplating. And so to have that understanding that you're not alone, you are not alone. And that helps them in so many different areas. So I think you have a really good mindset, especially after just 2.5 years, embracing Islam, and that mindset to just be the best example you can be. Inshallah, Allah guides both of you.
Yeah, I have to jump in here real quick. Mashallah, yes, I mean, may Allah guide us all and our children.
Yes.
I'm wrapping up a class for my master's degree. It's called Muslim Adolescent Identity Development. And I've learned so much. And I'm listening to you, Sister Anna and Sister Orenda. And subhanAllah, that's one of the key factors, right? That our kids become who we are. But, sometimes they don't. And that's their own personality. And I think as parents, we are very hard on ourselves, but it's that identity crisis that we all go through, whether we're adolescents, new Muslims, women, we become mothers, we lose ourselves along the way. And there's so many clashes that we need to equip ourselves, and now at this point, our children, with the right tools and resources to be able to navigate all of these different I don't want to say identities, but these different things that are thrown at us for because of life, right? You get married, you have a wife now. Now you have to introduce someone as your wife. There's no dating, there's no boyfriend and girlfriend. So you go from, I met you and, oh, she's my wife or he's my husband. And that alone causes a lot in the brain. There's a lot of shift, because you're still getting to know yourself. And so one of the things I was thinking while you both were talking is, for me, raising my son and really drenching myself in the faith. That's all I had. Like I breathe, I wake up, everything was Islam, and it has been my entire life after converting, alhamdulillah. So my son has only seen that, right? And I thought he was going to be a hafiz because it's been difficult for me to memorize. And so I put so much pressure on him. And there was one day where he says, that's it. He learned 10 juz and he's like, I'm done. I don't want this no more. And it was like, I was broken. I was like, oh my God, no way. How? Where did I go wrong? And I had to learn to let go. This is him. And I don't want him to hate the Quran because to feed my own nafs, right? My own desire of wanting to memorize, but because I'm busy, I'm a single parent and what have you. So both of you set that stage where we need to really let our children embark their own journey. And I mean, I know we're kind of going off topic, but we're not, because it's part of the story as converts. There's a lot of things that people don't understand that we navigate through, right? And so subhanAllah, my son's name is Andrew. And so automatically he is going to go through his life as questioning if he's a revert or a convert.
Mhm.
And he used to have such a hard time with that. Like, he's like, Mom, but I'm the first one that was born Muslim. Why are people telling me I'm a convert? And, you know, some kids even kind of bullied him. Like, oh, so you're Muslim? You're not Muslim? And just that questioning, like, even started fracturing his own identity. You know, I had to sit him down. So I think it's so important to have these conversations. And a lot of our convert sisters and brothers don't know how to navigate this. And so it's important that we're bringing it up. And the fact that you're raising her completely different than perhaps Sister Orenda raised hers, I raised mine. I've kind of seen the harvest throughout the years when my son went, you know, this summer to his father's, and he was supposed to go for 2 weeks. He shortened his trip and he's like, I'm coming home. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I'll tell you when I get home. And I was like, okay, is everything okay? I was so worried. I was happy, but I was really worried. And he
Right.
goes, well, it's not Muslim and I feel uncomfortable and they're eating this. And it's just, it's not my element. I love them, but he had to, he himself without me saying anything. And that's where you see what you said, Sister Anna, living by example, Sister Renda. So I think that's just beautiful. You laid that out so beautiful. And so does she pray with you? Do you allow her to just be herself? And how does that work? I mean, if she were to come to you and say, I want to learn, is that something you're open to? Or do you want her to
Yeah.
get to an age where she takes decisions on her own?
No, if she expressed interest, then I'm happily gonna provide that information for her. I just don't pressure her into doing it. But like how you mentioned your son going to her father's, like I definitely am experiencing that now. Like back in Dallas, I lived on my own with my daughter, and so it was a lot easier to establish like different like Islamic practices when it came to fasting. Like now I've moved back in with my parents and my family, and I get it. I get it now how it's more of a challenge when your entire atmosphere is not on the same page as you, and that extra like level of effort that you have to go. Like what I've experienced is wanting to fall back into old habits because this is where I grew up, so I want to just doesn't make sense, like go back to what was comfortable here instead of trudging through the uncomfortable differences with my family. Like what are we having for dinner? Oh, I don't eat pork anymore, so can we have something else? Or I can go get my own food, or I'll go and do my own grocery shopping. Like things like that kind of makes you feel different from your family. Yeah. So I try for my daughter, I try to minimize that because I'm at an age where I can understand why I'm different from my family, but I don't necessarily want to start making my daughter feel like, why can't I relate to my own family? I want her to have that strong family bond and still continue to learn about Allah. Like it doesn't have to be about like the rules right now at this age for her. But when she expressed the interest, then it'll be easier because it comes from her own desire to please Allah. Inshallah.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that as well. It's a challenge. If you have your own atmosphere, you're able to set the pace, you know, for you and your kids. I definitely felt that when I would go to my family, even though they're very understanding and very supportive of my faith and our practicing it. But going there, their whole life is different. And so I would have to make accommodations. And it was extra work. It really was. It was like, now there's halal meat over there, but you know, and that's a different story. That's just my preference for what I follow. But I would travel cross country from the East Coast to the West Coast driving and have to stop and get dry ice to restock the freezer because I brought, you know, meat prepackaged and frozen from where I'm from so that I could have meat for my kids for the whole month, you know, to be able to cook. And then I would end up cooking for everybody so that I could make sure, you know, I wouldn't say like, oh, we can't eat your meat. I would be like, oh, our treat, you know, I'm going to make food for you guys. And they love the meat. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so delicious.
Right.
I'm like, yeah. Do you know why? Because, and then I would tell them how they're slaughtered and how there's not all these hormones. So the beauty in Islam, and this is one thing I want to bring up because we're talking about in our stories. everything happens for a reason. So all these things that we think are rules and regulations, right, that we deal with our kids, thinking that there's so much restrictions. So when we go to our families, we feel like there's a lot of things that we don't do that they do. But because we come into Islam and we're fully immersed in learning about this, we realize there's so much wisdom behind everything that is taught to us. So there is a reason for everything that we do. And I think that was one thing that I came to an understanding that I really needed to teach my kids. So if I was teaching my kids from a very early age, you know, why we don't eat this or that. And Mom, did you used to eat it? Well, yeah, I did back then. And, you know, so you have your back life to fall back on, that the kids can ask you questions. And I would tell them, I said, you know, I can really, really tell you why we shouldn't do this because I experienced it. So whether that's going, you know, dating or drinking or whatever it is that we may have participated in our lives before Islam, but keep in mind, that doesn't mean it's going to mold their decisions. They're still going to go off and experience their own things. And so another important point is, we as converts experience that life before. We're following a different life and we're striving to do as best as we can every day. But ultimately, it's Allah that guides. And so when we're talking about, you know, converting and then having our families or children or spouses or whoever, your job is simply be the example and share what you know. Share the wisdom behind it. And it's Allah that is the one that's going to guide or not. And so that takes a lot of the pressure off the struggles that we go through as new Muslims, right? Feeling like we're not fitting in. You don't have to fit in. Just be you. And inshallah, Allah takes care of the rest. So great stories.
And not compromise. Let me add just that before I ask Anna something. Not compromise, you know, whether if, you know, in the time of the Prophet, you know, people kept their traditions as long as it didn't go against Islam. You know, for Eid, we break piñatas. That's okay. There's nothing in Islam that says don't break piñatas, you know, or we like our food. We just make it halal. So there's really nothing in Islam that takes us away from our culture. Yes. We are supposed to actually keep our culture as long as it goes in line with Islam. If it goes against Islam, we obviously should not like it and stay away from it. So that's the other thing, not compromising. How did your family take your conversion, Sister Anna?
Yeah. Let me add one last thing. When you say not compromise, I also think to add that you try your best.
Yes.
That I've definitely come through countless situations where I'm trying not to compromise, but at the same time, I'm just not ready to take that step. Something just in me, I don't have the courage. I don't have the knowledge as to why I shouldn't be doing this. I fall into temptations. And I just want to say that it's okay. You stumbled, you get back up and you try again. Like, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned now as a Muslim, like 2 years in, is that even if you stumble, you keep trying your best every single day. That's super important to me. As far as like my family, how they took it. So because I was really quick to go through this embrace of a new religion, and I had already been living away from my parents for a couple of years now. I remember that my mom was actually in Honduras visiting family, and I didn't want to tell them over the phone, like, okay, I've embraced Islam, I'm Muslim now. Like I didn't know how they were going to take it. So I waited until after Ramadan when I went down to Houston to be able to see them, to tell them. And this is a good and a bad thing. I don't fully remember what it was like, but it wasn't bad. But it wasn't like, oh wow, we're so excited for you. It was just kind of like, are you sure? We're like, what are you doing? Like, why? Kind of like
curiosity.
So what are you going to be like now? Yeah. With a little bit of like hesitation. as to like, what does this all mean? And I was just trying to like tell him like, look, you raised me. You know who I am. You know how I'm like you know that I wouldn't run into something bad or troublesome. So please believe me when I say that there is good in this. And I'm going to just be doing what is best. Like I've given up all these bad habits and built a relationship with God. And I definitely it has helped me build my relationship with me and my mom. Like I've always been super close to my parents, but now me and my mom will talk about God together. And like she has her understanding and I have my understanding, and we're trying to like bridge the connection with like, I feel like we're talking about like the same God. You just kind of learned about him one way, and I've learned about God in a different way. And that helps build in the sense of like, we still want a relationship with our creator. And that's, I think, what's makes my parents happy, that my mom had kind of always had tried to like tell me like, oh, thank God for your good grades. And when I was little, I was like, what does God have to do about it? It was me who did all the studying. I'm the one that learned all this. Like, and like, because she believed it was Jesus, to me, it was like, how did a man from like thousands of years ago do anything about me today? And now that I know, it's like, oh, that's not how I recognize God, but God is something that's limitless. That it's like, okay, now I see the type of role that God had in my life. And so my parents have learned to accept the changes. And I think it's because all the changes, alhamdulillah, have been positive changes. It has really made me somebody that's intentional, somebody much kinder, willing to help others. I've learned about keeping that relationship with my parents strong and healthy, and even with my grandparents. So much good has come from me becoming Muslim that I think it brings a peace to my parents in that way. I will say the hardest part is the hijab, because the way I try and have understanding with them is that I understand that I am no longer the picture that they imagined of their daughter. Like, I get it. Having a daughter, I always envision my daughter's life, the best that I want for her. So I get that I've kind of completely gone off script for them. And they're kind of just like stunned by the change, the external change that they can see. But I try and tell them, like, with hijab, like, I value myself more. I have higher standards when it comes to interactions with the opposite gender. Like, it makes me feel more empowered this way, that I'm in control of these things. And you know what? It's important to me that I represent a Muslim and a Latina, because there's been countless amount of times where I'd be speaking Spanish, like in a Home Depot, and the worker there is like, wait, you speak Spanish? And I'm like, yeah, I'm Latina. And then the guy's like, you wear that? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm also Muslim. And it just starts a conversation. And like, to be quite honest, like, I started wearing hijab day by day. I was just like, I want to be known as a Muslim. Like, I want those rights and respects. So that's kind of how I started. And I just took it day by day. And there has been days where I think society got to me, the expectations of society of wanting that femininity back, where it's like, okay, I let it go. And I go out and I feel like something's missing. And I feel like when I do something nice, it's like, darn, like, they can't see that it's because I'm Muslim that I learned to be this nice to others. And it's like, I could have been a good example at that point. Or like the opposite feeling of like, okay, maybe I want to do something that if I was seen as a hijabi, it wouldn't be great, you know? And so it's like, okay, I don't want to be a hijabi in this moment because I know what I'm doing is not right. But it makes me think more about what I'm going to be doing and why I'm doing it. And even if I did make that mistake, I'm just like, oh, I should have just stayed home, essentially.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Go ahead.
It keeps us accountable. And I mean, I think when you hear your story, and so many of us can relate, is that Islam doesn't really make you a different person. It makes you a better version of who you are. And a lot of that has to do with how we were brought up and who brought us up, right? So whether that was grandparents or parents or whatever. And I used to tell my parents the same thing, even though, they would have questions and they couldn't understand maybe some of the things I would share. But when I would explain it and I would say, this led me to something based on the core values you taught me. This was based on the core values that you taught me.
Yes.
And I found the missing link. So yeah, it's and the hijab definitely, I can relate to that too, that you don't think that you get as much respect, or some of us may have had some negative feedback from people in our lives or strangers. I've had strangers walk up to me, especially after 9/11, and give me a mouthful, but a lot of it's just because they don't know. And so I find it as like an amazing dawah tool, right? Like you said, it brings up conversations. I love that. I love that people ask questions. And so it's important for us. People are going to treat us different when we're more open about what we believe. And it's simply because most people don't really know. And it's because we're not having that dialogue. And so dialoguing with those people, everything we choose to do in our life has an effect. And so I think it's so amazing that even in such a short period, I mean, it took me more than 2 years to decide to wear the hijab. I knew I wanted to, but mashallah, may Allah bless you and keep you strong in it, because it is definitely a blessing. And the more you share your feelings and why you chose that, people will understand it better.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end of this hour. One of the things that you both said that really struck me, and I think I'm going to use it as a dawah tool in the future, is the fact, right, that you raised me and you know who I am. And so I'm only a better version of myself thanks to those core values that you brought me up with. So I think that's an easy way to kind of insert it, especially for our new Muslims that are watching that don't know how to have that conversation with their family members. I think that's essential. It's important, and hopefully it'll make your journey easier. Sister Anna, we're coming to an end. Is there any advice that you want to give your fellow brothers and sisters who are entering the faith, thinking about embracing Islam or have embraced it too fast? Any advice? The year is ending. We're getting closer also to the Day of Judgment. And just so many things to reflect and ponder on as we continue this journey of life. Any advice for our audience?
Yes. Inshallah, I put this in a concise way. What I feel like is that when I embraced Islam, I did not know everything about Islam. I just knew the core beliefs that were true. There was no denying it. And that was enough for me to start. And I just want those to know that you don't have to be praying, know how to pray, be wanting to wear hijab from day one. All of that comes with time, with knowledge, with intention, with understanding. I say focus on learning about who our creator, building that relationship, making tons of dua about it. It's like the best thing that I can ever do if I'm feeling low in iman is just to make dua. That meaning like I just talk to God, and you can talk to God anywhere in any shape or form. It's just your thoughts, your relationship. So that when things do get tough, you know what you can fall back upon is your knowledge and your relationship that you have, and also to evaluate who you surround yourself with. Yeah. Like you want to become the best version of yourself, and that starts with internal work, and it also starts with who you surround yourself with.
Ding, ding, ding.
Awesome. You hit it on the nail. Perfect. I really don't think there's much we can add to that, because we always say it here, knowledge, your company is who you become. So be very careful who you select. And last night somebody brought up, even if they're Muslim, select carefully, because not everyone is practicing or can bring the best of you. So just make sure that you don't fall into those habits that you didn't have, but you pick up because you're with the wrong crowd, right? True. So, Sister Orenda, anything else, or are we good?
No, I have one really quick point I want to make, and it has to do with our title, Own Your Story. Why do we need to own our story as converts? Because it's kind of like if we don't know the negative, we can't really appreciate the positive. And it's like when you have a really bad toothache and it's horrible, but why do I have this pain? Why do I have this pain? And you go get it fixed, and then it's amazing. There's no pain. And so embracing your story from the past, there might be a lot of negative things in your past, but it is exactly what had to happen for you to get where you're at today. And it's a lesson for tomorrow. And so what we have to do is learn from those lessons from our past, embrace them because they are a part of us. And it's a part of what helped us get to where Allah led us today. And so just make sure own your story. It's okay. It's not about what other people think about what you did or what you were before. It's about that happened then, before I knew. And now this is how I am. And so don't be shy. Don't be shy about that, and don't feel bad, because you never know. When you share something that's maybe very vulnerable and you think somebody's going to be like, oh, you did that? Guess what? They might have done the same thing and feel like they have to hide under a rock. So they understand. They can understand and feel like they're not alone. And it's about today. It's not about yesterday.
Mashallah. Mashallah. Well, I want to thank you, Sister Anna, for accepting our invitation. We hope this is not the last time that we have you on here. It's really been refreshing, and I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate you sharing everything that you did share with us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I know our audience really enjoyed your conversation. And so we want to tell our audience to go ahead and share this out, share it with new converts that may be navigating this journey of embracing Islam or thinking about it. If you have any topics as the year is coming to an end, Sister Orenda normally sit down and see what we're going to be talking about in 2022. If there's any topics you would want us to talk about, please do put it in the chat, send us an inbox, and we're more than happy to bring that to life. I want to thank you both again, and I want to thank our audience for being so attentive, mashallah. And until next time, we are here every Thursday, with the exception of last week, 11 o'clock. And inshallah, in the future, if we don't come on, we will make sure to let you know, because I know many of you are waiting for this breath of fresh air and iman boost, as someone wrote to me. So Jazakallah khair, ladies. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Until next time, my name is Nahela Morales, and I'm here with Sister Orenda Dadkhah and Sister Anna Midense. Salam alaikum.